Australia's relationship with China has changed dramatically over the past 50 years. These two culturally diverse nations have come together in a way our forefathers could never have imagined. Today, China plays a significant role in our trade and tourism. In fact, in 2020, Australia exported over $100 billion worth of goods to China. That's over 40% of our total exports to the world. Our nations have a long history and deep ties, and nowhere more so than here in Melbourne. Melbourne is home to Australia's largest population of Chinese, and it's fair to say they've had a major impact on our culture. Oh, but where are our two nations heading to next? There's going to be some big challenges, but even bigger opportunities. After all, it's the Year of the Dragon, which traditionally promises prosperity, strength, courage, and good fortune. So will that be the case for our two great nations as we head to 2030 and beyond? Hello, I'm Rob McKnight, and welcome to China, Australia Beyond 2030. Have a look at this. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone as vibrant and interesting as Christina Zhao. Just ask her Instagram followers. Christina is one of the new generation of Australian Chinese entrepreneurs and business leaders forging a new way. Born in China and raised in Shanghai, she came to Australia 10 years ago as an international student to study event management. A decade on, she's now the hand-picked president of the Melbourne Chinatown Business Council. Her job is big, her aspirations bigger. And her links to China are very personal. Christina, welcome.
Hi, Rob.
Look, it's really nice to meet you. You are running the Melbourne Chinatown Business Association, and your role is essentially to get tourists and Chinese descendants back to Chinatown.
Yeah, and then also anyone, because obviously during after COVID time, everything's not fully recovered. It's not only Chinese who lives in Melbourne, but also a lot of people actually not coming back to Melbourne Chinatown, not coming back to city. To enjoy the food, to dining here with family. So what we do is to collect and to gather all those businesses together as a business association, and then we do different activities, marketing campaigns, events to attract more people back. Not only Asian, Chinese, but also people who actually miss Melbourne Chinatown.
And there are so many links to Chinatown. It's an historic part of Melbourne. It's Australia's oldest Chinatown. It's Australia's largest Chinatown.
Yes. There's a very, very rich history in Melbourne Chinatown. But also there's something new, exciting things coming. So there's new emerging brands, business in Chinatown. So definitely we're looking forward to this.
And so that's that mixture of old and new, essentially, isn't it?
Yep.
The culture, the historic culture, and modernising the precinct.
When we talk about Chinatown, what would you think of? For me, I think of dumplings, right? And then traditional cultures, dragons, lions, but also there's a lot modern bars, like Australian cool bars, nice cocktails, awarded cocktails hidden in rooftop in Chinatown. So yeah.
So is that the new face of Chinatown?
I would say it's a combination of both Chinese food and rich history and culture, as well as a bit Australian culture. So it's more like a combination of both.
Is it working? Are the tourists coming back?
Yes, but also there's people outside Chinatown who doesn't live in Chinatown prison area. For example, families live in other suburbs. They're all coming back to Chinatown to have dinner together with the family members, and then they send kids back. Maybe young couples who have a like drinks bars at the rooftop bar.
When you look at what you're achieving in this role, do you look back and have a look at the journey you took to get here? Because you didn't even tell your parents that you were applying for visas to come to Australia to study out here.
Yeah, that's actually, So I told my parents that I'm going to Australia the day that I received my visa. So I pretty much saved, my New Year pocket money and saved money, and then trying to apply visa myself. And then I was lucky. Yeah, I got my visa, and then pretty much I told my parents, and they said, just go if you want to.
And what's interesting is that when we see a lot of international students come out here, it's actually helping the tourism sector because their families are coming out. Did your family come out to Australia during that time?
They visit me regularly, like once a year or twice every year. So a lot of my friends' family, they all take it as a holiday, right? Obviously, when your kids are here, right? And then they come to Australia to visit us.
What are you doing to celebrate the Year of the Dragon?
Well, obviously, we're going to do a lot of events, trying to different activities, events, festivals, cultural festivals, music festival, food festival. We're trying to bring more tourists and then more people coming back to Melbourne, Chinatown. But it's not the most important thing. But the most important thing is to bring people back to Melbourne, Chinatown as a destination to see what great food we have here, what great culture we have here.
Well, you're about to meet a man whose passion for China began as a boy. When Tom Parker's elder sister married into a Chinese family, they welcomed Tom too. He decided to learn Mandarin at school and later Melbourne University. Tom's passion then became his vocation, first as a journalist reporting out of China and now as National CEO of the Australia-China Business Council. And he's also good friends with Christina. Tom Parker, that is not the only reason we've got you in.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks.
Now, what is the Australia-China Business Council trying to achieve?
Well, the Australia-China Business Council last year celebrated its 50th anniversary, and it was formed the year after the formalisation of relationships between Australia and the People's Republic of China.
China is our close neighbour. In China today, we see a great modernising force capable of exerting profound influence in the world.
And its aim is really to act as a conduit to support Australian businesses to better engage and understand and take advantage, I guess, of market opportunities in China, as well as assisting Chinese invest into Australia as well.
Well, in fact, your members still helped the business community even when relations were very frosty between the two countries.
Understandably, yes. I think the ACBC, given its history and its relationship, provided a really important second-track diplomacy when sometimes people weren't picking up the phone in Beijing.
Now, you've lived and you've worked in China. What actually brings our two cultures together?
There's things that we dig up and we put on a boat and send over to China, and then obviously get turned into and have helped and assisted, in terms of China's, recent economic development. The great urbanization of China, which has seen now 50% of the world's population living in cities as opposed to in the countryside, was really off the back of, the iron ore that was in the Pilbara that got turned into steel that made the freeways, the roads and the buildings that helped that migration. I think there's also a great connection between Australia and China that goes back more than just 50 years. Melbourne has the oldest Chinatown.
It certainly does, and largest.
And the largest. And so when those, Chinese miners and market gardeners first arrived, that's where they landed and that's where they've stayed. And it's been fantastic. And I think that people don't necessarily realise that 25% of Victoria's population, prior to 1901, male population anyway, was Chinese. And so we've had that connectivity for a long period of time, and there's been, a dramatic uptick in terms of that business relationship. And I think what we're seeing now too is the new generation, which is people like Christina, who may have come out here and studied, but have then stayed on and are contributing and bringing their skills, their energy, their passion, and their entrepreneurship, and adding to the relationship. And I think that that's our secret weapon. Unfortunately, it's not necessarily recognised. I think that often international education, and certainly students that come from China, is well known and is documented in terms of the number and the importance. But I don't think we realise the vitality that they bring to our city centres, what they also bring in terms of visitation from a tourism perspective, and then longer term migration and investment. And I really see that that's an opportunity that Australia should be celebrating in terms of what it, and I guess the connectors that it has for business between Australia and China.
How safe is it for Australian businesses exporting to China when tariffs could be pulled at a moment's notice?
I think what we've seen following the recent visit from the Prime Minister and his meeting with President Xi Jinping and the joint statement of outcomes from that particular meeting has been a return to dialogue, which was missing.
Now, the China-Australia relationship has embarked on the right path of improvement and development. I'm heartened to see that. A healthy and stable China-Australia relationship serves the common interests of our two countries and two peoples.
I would hope that there's a recognition that this was a point where the relationship moved forward.
Through that process, I guess there's a greater sense of surety, but what we are seeing from our members and from the business community is an understanding that the relationship has shifted, and that's not necessarily a negative thing. It's perhaps a more clear-eyed optimism in terms of the risk that Australian businesses need to undertake, and to have that due diligence before engaging and looking at that particular market.
So does that mean it all comes down to the government of the day in Australia on how they deal with China and whether businesses can feel safe enough?
I don't think safe is the right word. It's probably more around the approach and the pragmatism that the government has in terms of maintaining the relationship. But I also think it's up to businesses in terms of understanding and working through their associations and then feeding that back into government to ensure that those relationships are maintained.
From your perspective, does it all come down to personal relationships and those business communities that you're building?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you want to do exceptional business in China, it comes down to relationships and the longevity of those relationships.
Which can work outside government political pressures of the day.
Absolutely. And I think that what we found is that the people-to-people relationship was actually missing a little bit, partly because of COVID, which meant that unfortunately we weren't able to leave the country, and obviously there were quarantine restrictions going into China as well. What we're sensing and what we're seeing now is that as the borders have opened back up both ways, there's been a real excitement and almost a fervour of kind of reconnecting and I guess seeing those relationships and those business opportunities, notwithstanding that the context has changed. But it is, I believe, our relationship is underpinned through the people-to-people relationships and that understanding that we have.
Christina, I've seen a lot of nodding from you during Tom speaking there. That all seems to correlate with what you're seeing.
Yes, absolutely, yes. But obviously the business in Chinatown, we mainly focus, on people who's in Australia, right, live in Melbourne and are running business there. But also if there's new brand coming from China, they want to set up a new business, find a new location, is in Chinatown. So that's involved a little bit of the relationship.
Yep.
Like Tom mentioned, right, personal relationship, who you know, and then how you're going to find a great place and a great location for your business from China, and then help with the rest of the business things.
So we know it's the year of the dragon. We want prosperity. as part of that. Tom, obviously our tourism numbers are not the same as they were, not as high as they were pre-COVID. Can we get back to those figures? Can we bring prosperity as part of the Year of the Dragon?
I think so. I think that we've seen from August last year the return of group travel to Australia. I think approved destination status that Australia has for Chinese travellers is really crucial. But I think particularly here in Victoria, one of the main focus for tourism is really what we call visiting friends and relatives, or the VFR sector. And they're a crucial sector. And as Christina talked about with visitation from her family that came through when she was studying, it's the stays that they have much longer than, say, a group tour that might be literally 24 to 48 hours in Melbourne, or 4 days in Australia.
We've all done those tours when we've gone. I've gone to Europe and it's Tuesday. I must be in Brussels. You know, how do we get them to stay longer then?
Well, I think again through highlighting the role of education and I guess our migrant communities that are here.
That's what we're doing. We're trying to recover from COVID. Let's go back to the political angle, because we've just seen our Prime Minister go to Shanghai and visit the International Expo there. How big a deal is that for trying to get the Chinese to reconnect with Australia?
I think what it shows to the Chinese system, and certainly to Chinese businesses, is that we're willing to engage, but it also then provides, I guess, and sometimes it gets a little bit lost around the symbolism, and that whilst there is a pragmatic outcome for a Prime Minister to have a photo shoot with a lobster or a can of Bundaberg ginger beer or Bulla ice cream, what it really shows is that there's a commitment to engage.
Yeah.
And I think that it's also the fact that following from that, he went to Beijing and met with President Xi Jinping. What it does is it signals to the rest of China, well, Australia's a trusted trade partner. Not that we perhaps ever weren't, but in the eyes from a Chinese perspective and a political perspective, we certainly were. And that will then, I guess, in some ways open, the doors. And certainly we found from an ACBC perspective, more inquiries, more emails, WeChat messages and phone calls that says we're back.
So you have literally you've noticed a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been almost to the day.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
It plays that big a role.
Yes.
China is our most important trading partner. It represents more than 25% of our exports, and 1 in 4 of our jobs relies upon our trade. So it's an important relationship.
Well, immigrating to Australia is a dream held by many Chinese. But what are the positives and negatives to such a move? In Australia, there is really only one person to ask. His name is Sean Dong. These days, his home is Melbourne, where his qualifications are, well, have a look at the screen. They are really nothing short of impressive. Sean was born in East China in Shandong province, the birthplace of Confucius. He came to Australia at 16 to finish high school and describes his time as the best days of his life. And now he's transforming other lives as Melbourne's top migration agent, assisting Chinese families to come to Australia. Sean Dong, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rob.
Hey, look, it's a pleasure to have you. Why did you come to Australia in the first place?
For better study opportunities.
Well, we can tell that you've made use of that. Have a look at that list again. It's a very, solicitor of the Supreme Court of Victoria, a member of the Law Council of Australia. There's a lot in there.
Oh, I did a lot of study while I was working, and I love what I do, so I did more study to finance it. So, yeah, it's more of a passion, I think. People told me I studied too much. I think maybe I did.
Well, you're putting it to good use as a migration lawyer, and we'll talk about that in a moment.
Sure.
But I'm intrigued at how you learnt English. Is it true it was through Disney movies?
Yeah, that's pretty much true. We never studied any English until year 7. So there was no English at all. So we had to start ABCs from year 7, but it was too slow. So I started watching movies. Then back then it was VCDs, before the DVD day. That gave me the opportunity to learn English. And there's no one in my small town to talk to, so I talk to myself every day to practice oral English.
So why Australia, Sean?
I always fascinated Australia for some reason. Obviously, when I came in 2002, after the 9/11, America's not a destination to go.
Right.
And Australia's probably have a good balance of cost and the culture. I always liked Melbourne. I have never been to Melbourne. I haven't done any research on Melbourne, but my parents told me that they want to send me to Melbourne to study. I was really happy. I guess it's destiny.
Well, it obviously is. As a migration lawyer, that's your story of coming to Australia. We've heard Christina's story of why she came to Australia. Is that similar? Is that a similar reason why many people come to study here and immigrate here?
Definitely, because it's more competitive in China to get into good universities compared to the ranking, especially. So my parents wanted me to send me to a top-tier university. So I came here to study with the purpose of getting into the University of Melbourne. Yeah. Fortunately, I achieved it. Yeah. My parents were happy. So they thought it was money well spent.
Well, that's good.
I don't know. Yeah, but yeah.
Recently, the Home Affairs Minister, Claire O'Neill, she described the migration system as broken in fundamental ways.
Migration helped us become a more prosperous and secure Australia because the system was designed to meet the challenges of the moment. And that is not true of our system today.
Do you agree with that?
I partly agree with it. I think the system has been patched up for a very long time, over 20 years. And there were mechanisms there with a good purpose to achieve procedural fairness. But it became a loophole.
Okay, let's look at the big picture. We're talking about China, Australia beyond 2030.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of migration program happening in Australia?
Take me as an example. There are many friends who came to Australia to study similar to my era. They've been here for over 20 years. They start to contribute to the society. Some of them are doing very well, much better than I'm doing. So I think that's the benefit of this new generation of Chinese Australians are producing amazing results. Not only that, but they also bring two cultures together.
And Tom, from the business community side of things, are you seeing a lot of people come through who can help forge those relationships back to China?
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, I think sometimes they're unrecognised and unrewarded because many of the Chinese Australians who are here have an inherent network already in China, but also have an understanding of that market or of that community that enables, whether if it's a service or a product that could be sold, they have perhaps a better way within which to understand and to straddle, I guess, both cultures and both markets in order of getting that through.
Sean, what are the traps for genuine Chinese people who are trying to get here? There are scammers out there, aren't there?
More than we can think of. There's a big gap between the cultures and also the social system. And when you come to a different country, the society works differently, but many migrants don't really understand. Mm-hmm. And there are people profiting from these information asymmetry that is out there. Yeah.
So what do people need to look out for?
I think the first thing to look out for is the promises that you hear.
Yep.
Right? If people promise you all the best results, be careful. And second thing to look out for is the scammers out there always use, they can make a document looks legitimate, but it's not fundamentally legitimate, but people don't understand. have a lawyer to look at it or have an accountant to look at it, to get professional opinion and pay for the professional opinion, then you will save a lot of money.
Said like a true lawyer and accountant. On a lighter side, when you came to Australia, you said it was the best years of your life, and you even started a band.
We did. In China, we study every day, 7 days a week. In here, we study half day. So a lot of that time, what we do, we learn music.
Oh, sure. I asked that question just as an excuse because I've been on YouTube today and I have found this video of you and your band.
It is embarrassing. We are not professional. We learned for a year and
that is you singing there, isn't it, with the guitar?
Yes, not very good, but
Tom, you had a band when you were younger.
Yeah,
Are you on par with Sean?
Not quite the same style of music, but I played in China with a band called Hot Pot.
The band of your name is much more fun than ours.
What was your band's name?
My Hogwa, which means hot pot.
Okay, and what was yours?
Oh, terrible. Sound of Hell. We were just mocking ourselves.
But it's funny, isn't it? We started the conversation, Christina, talking about community and what Sean was doing, and Tom. Yeah. And no matter where you are, it brings us back to community, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
How important is community in everything we're doing, Tom? Whether it's business dealings, whether it's coming to the country, how important is that sense of community?
I think it's incredibly valuable, and from my time in China, music was a real access point for me to kind of connect in with local Chinese people and musicians. And I'd say I learned more Chinese language through connecting rather than in the classroom. For a lot of Chinese coming to Australia, there are some great opportunities to connect in with Australian culture and find ways within which to understand and find that access point.
All right, this is called Australia, China Beyond 2030. Give me your big picture idea of where we're heading and what you think is important to what's happening with the two countries and how we're coming together. Christina, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, it's quite simple. Like, it's also what I'm doing here. Build up a community and bring all the resources together. Obviously, bring everyone together. Doesn't matter business or you play music, you have a band, or you're international students, you business owner, you tourists. So I just want to say, just come to Australia and then there's a community here waiting for you. We are here to support, to help, and to share our own stories with you guys.
Yeah, we are a big country, lucky to have the Chinese culture influence our daily lives. Sean, what about you?
I just wish that there's less misunderstanding between the two cultures. I hope more Chinese Australians will be contributing to the society and vice versa. I hope that when an Australian guy go to a Chinese restaurant, don't just order fried rice.
But I love fried rice.
I know. But when I visit America, I noticed that American people enjoy more authentic Chinese food than just fried rice and dumplings.
I feel bad because I literally had fried rice and dumplings yesterday.
There's nothing wrong with it. I think there's more work to do to bring two cultures together and have a deeper understanding.
Yeah.
With understanding, there will be more harmony, I think.
Absolutely. Tom?
Well, I'll take your fried rice and I'll raise you a dim sim.
Well,
I think the dim sim is really, in some ways, the beacon of multiculturalism in Melbourne and in Australia. It was invented by Chinese Australians at the football at the MCG. It was an adaptation of the siu mai, and then it was put out through Greek fish and chip shops in the 60s and 70s and went all across the country. So the dim sim that we know and love and many people hate is an Australian kind of adaptation, but in many ways is that point. But perhaps on more serious matters, I think by 2030, we live in a very troubled time. I think geopolitically there are some very strong currents that are moving in some choppy waters. What I hope is that there's, I guess, pragmatism and there's a measured response in terms of how we engage against that backdrop of, I guess, of more protectionism. If we can continue to strive for, free trade agreements, bilateral arrangements, visits and exchanges and connections between communities, the relationship will grow and prosper.
Well, Christina, Sean and Tom, your insights have been fantastic today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of China, Australia Beyond 2030. We'll be back soon with another episode. We'll see you then.